Final Fantasy VII, the first Soldier's just been released, and I've been playing that over the weekend since launch day on my Poco F3 using a GameSir X2, and it does have controller support, so it's worked extremely well. And this is just my thoughts on the game itself. So since playing it from launch, originally downloaded it and pre-registered it and got it going from there, I found that the gameplay itself is extremely similar to other shooters, except it's got the hand-to-hand or the melee combat, which is slightly different. Granted, most of the areas, the items, the attacks, the materia, the aka magic, is all very familiar with me as I've played Final Fantasy for quite some time now. I do get like the vibe that this could almost be just a reskinned Battlegrounds. Granted, that's what it is, so don't bother complaining about that. But I do find that I do get weird texture pops, like at certain points of the game, I feel like the res of the item, like the walls on the outside here, for example, is just extremely low. So you get to a spot and you see a whole bunch of high quality textures, like up there where it says machine gun. And the floor, like the actual textures of the pavement here, looks pretty good. But then I'll get to some areas and it'll just look dreadful, like it looks like it's unfinished, incomplete, or it still feels like it's trying to render it. But I find that overall the combat itself was fine, excluding the overall appearance of it. Like character models do look great, they're fine, that's where the majority of effort seems to have gone into, or at least that's where it's maintaining the quality. Where it just seems like you're running around with a PlayStation 3 character model in a PlayStation 2 world. Just stuff about it doesn't quite add up. But excluding that and the odd texture pop and low quality images every now and then, I feel like the game itself runs perfectly fine on my Poco F3. I think that's got a Snapdragon 865 if I remember correctly. And it runs fine, but there's just weird limitations of the engine. I feel like that the graphics should be able to turn up even higher. There's low, medium and high, and it doesn't actually specify what that actually adjusts. And the frame rate of the game, I've had no real issues. You can see what kind of ping I'm getting at the moment. Down the bottom left hand side, 140, 150 milliseconds. Granted, most games I play do not have latency that high. Typically most of them are usually to an Australian server where I'm from, and it's usually under about 80 FPS or 80 milliseconds max, normally about 50 to 40. So I do have a slight disadvantage while playing. But I do find I do have a slight advantage while playing, mainly due to the controller. But I've had plenty of times where I get up close and personal, start attacking people with the sword, completely miss, and they hit me 3-4 times and I'm dead. The game itself, I found that most of the time when I'm playing, I usually just run off and start doing various objectives and hunt for items. So I'll just go off and start killing monsters. Even when I'm not actively trying to hunt other players, I find that the level itself seems to be too large for the actual lobby. So too large in a way that it's fairly rare, unless you go to a hotspot, that you actually just randomly come across someone. I think the best I managed to get is about 2 or 3 kills in a match, and they were about the only 2-3 people I saw. Granted, you could have that same slight complaint regarding any Battle Royale game, but I do feel like this map is a bit too large, and usually that's why I just go in with the tangent of this particular match. I'll go in and kill as many particular monsters as I can, and then if I come across a person, I'll either fight them or run off from there. The sound of it, sounds alright. Standard gun affair, standard magic. It does have Final Fantasy music, not during the game, but during the menus. So once you get into the game, it does usually get pretty quiet from there. So most of the time, I usually don't bother playing with audio on. I do find that you do also get an indication, like a small halo ring around your character, depicting if there's footsteps or if there's a treasure chest to open. So that's pretty cool in that regard, but it does also take away some of the skill of the game. Granted, if you're playing it with audio off using the touchscreen, I do see that as it would be an inferior way to play, as opposed to audio off with a controller. I do feel like this game would actually go better running on a PlayStation or something that it could actually fully utilize the world. Like, I feel like on the mobile side of things, it just feels restricted, where if this was on a PC, an Xbox, a PlayStation, probably not the Switch, it would probably run worse on the Switch actually, but I found that it just felt too limited. Like it felt like it was a console port without being a console port. Something didn't feel quite right about the game. I don't like the bombardment of like logging into the game. You get notifications saying new items available, essentially trying to push you towards the shop. Personally, if it's coming up as new, well, of course it's new. The game's been out less than 4 days, so chill out with that. Granted, that's where they're trying to make back most of their money with character customization, but that is something that doesn't overly interest me personally. The combat mechanics of it I don't mind. Granted, I have been playing it in controller mode, where the left trigger is iron sights and right trigger is shoot. So I find that seems to look alright. The gun models themselves look fine, no real complaints about there. Probably the only one I would complain about is the pistols look a lot bigger than what they actually are. Seeing a pistol in first person mode with an iron sight around it does look slightly odd. Do wish there was a bit more of a variety of enemies, as you can see here. I've only really encountered about 3 or 4 different types, so they do seem to be rather sparse. Granted, there would be particular methods to take them down quicker than what I'm doing, but it seems to be working for me. Matchmaking, I haven't really played with anyone else, so I haven't really bothered. I do find when I'm in the lobby itself, I do have an extremely high latency of about 800 milliseconds, which means the lobby shenanigans are basically non-existent because I can't even really move without rubber banding. But once I'm in the game itself and do the drop, it seems to be fine. I'm not sure the airdrop that happens, you do get to manually control the helicopter as you come in. Granted, it doesn't really feel that fast, nor can you really get too far away from the initial drop area. The chocobos are one way to get around, which I found, which you can summon them at summoning posts. Haven't really delved too far into what they can do or what they assist with, but it is definitely neat seeing them there. Overall, I'm probably going to keep playing this game for a little while, just to check it out. I do wish that there was also a colorblind mode on here, as I do find differentiating the blue from the purples with the items, like the item rarity, does give me a bit of hindrance sometimes. Granted, that is me on a personal level, but considering color blindness is a pretty predominant nowadays, or a pretty well-known disability, it should be something that more games do support. Especially, I hate it when most games go down the path of Diablo 1, Diablo 2, or Blizzard item rarities, where they have the different shades of color, which I wish there was more to differentiate them. But that is just modern gaming anyway. Anyway, I'm going to leave this footage playing for now. I don't really have too many other points of issue to bring up. And yeah, I hope this helps, and see you guys later. Bye.